Hi everybody, this is Dan O'Connor with Dan O'Connor Training, and this is principle number 2 of the 9 miraculous principles that will transform any relationship or conversation that you have. And this one is a more special lesson for me because as I was researching it and going over different studies and news articles that came out in the past month or so on the effects of language on the brain and on the people around us, I found a study that was just done by Cambridge University that cited that, or that showed that people who use profanity, language that I would have previously considered to be of a more negative or what would be considered dark nature, are actually considered to be and seen as more positive, productive, reliable, credible people. And I thought, well, had I known that, these lessons would have been a lot. So let's get this started.
Communication principle of the week.
Because the global tone has changed, the conversation has changed, and this is why I believe it's so important for you to be on board here, whether it's here or someplace else. We all want to, as communicators, as professionals, as human beings, especially if you're here, I know that you want to be part of the changing of this conversation that we're having. And I know it will change, but I want to be part of that change. Number one, because I want to be part of positive things. And number two, I just want it to end. I want it to end as quickly as possible. And one of the things that I can do and that you can do is illuminate the world around us. Not one of the things that we do as human beings, when somebody is negative around us, we tend to want to throw their negativity right back at them. If we work with somebody who's a sniper and they snipe us, or if we work with a backstabber or a weasel or a beggar or a time sucker, we work with these different energy vampires or negative people many times because we tend to see things backwards. We do. Even according to quantum physics, we tend to see things the opposite from how they really are. And we'll get into more of that later. But we tend to think and do things that are really the opposite of the right thing. If we see somebody who's being negative or who insults us or who hurts us or who hits us or who attacks us, generally what we will do is attack them right back, hurt them right back. We'll think about things, at home. We'll be sitting at our dinner table. Instead of enjoying the people that we're with, we'll sit around thinking, boy, the next time they say this to me, here's what I'm going to say to them. That'll get them. That'll teach that fucker a lesson. You know what I mean? But instead, we know that there's no power in that. There is no power in bringing more darkness to darkness. If I sense that a place is without light, and going back to Incas, back to the pyramids, there has always been a reference to we are children of the light. We are enlightened. We are beings of light. Because there's something in that truth that we know. As I've mentioned before, we always can sense truth. We can smell it. There's something about truth that resonates with human beings. Now, there's something about deception, about falsehoods, about illusion that also resonates with human beings. The bigger the illusion, the more we tend to look at it and be distracted by it. But eventually, we always stop looking at the illusion, the darkness, the false prophets, and I'm not religious, but we eventually stop looking at illusions because no matter how beautiful and wonderful and, wrapped up in presidential garb it may look, we tend to stop looking at that and we will look back to truth and say, I know no matter what you all say, my mother loves me. I know no matter what you all say, this is my home and these are my people. And I think it's interesting how, like fairy tales, that have lasted through centuries. There are certain tales, biblical tales, mythology, simple modern day fairy tales that have lasted and will last forever because we know there's truth to them. I know no matter how dark the night is, I know that it's not that the sun has gone away, it's just I can't see it. I know that even though she looks dead, she's not dead at all. Snow White is going to rise up from that coffin and all it's going to take is true love's kiss. That's it. Those are certain truths that I know to be true, on some level. And I know that when I'm looking at something and I perceive it to be dark or coming from a dark place, what that really means is it's coming from a nothing place. There's nothing to that. That is not creative. Creativity needs to have force. Force comes from light. Light is what we're made of. Light is real. Light can create. Light can do things. Light has substance. Darkness does not. There's not a thing that is darkness. When you look up darkness, darkness is the absence of light. There isn't, a whole lot of darkness here and a whole lot of light here. Put them together, let's see who wins. It's that darkness really by definition is the absence of light. You put light there, now it's illuminated. When you put the two together, light always wins. Darkness always loses. No one's ever said, we tried to light up that room, but, no matter how many light bulbs we put in, there was just so much darkness we couldn't light it up. Sorry. That doesn't happen. It just takes a little light and it can illuminate. Actually, what they find is the entire universe. That ray of light will never stop. Energy isn't something that we can either create or destroy. It just is, and it always will be forever. We can, however, transfer it. I can take negative energy and throw it to you. I can also take negative energy and transform it into positive energy. There was some studies recently about light. They found a new type of light. Well, they think they found a new type of light, but actually what they found was, if I'm understanding it correctly, we found a new way to look at light. Like we used to always think that light was a certain way. Now we kind of know that based on these recent studies, light does not simply travel in a straight line, but it kind of swirls around and does this little dance, and it's kind of always going off course a little bit. And I thought, see, light is like me. I feel as though I'm always a little bit off course, but I hope at the end of the story I will get to my destination because I'm going there in a straight line while on this, there's a duality to it where it's traveling around in circles, but also in a straight line. And that's kind of the duality that we all share. I feel as though half the time I'm traveling in circles and spinning out of control, but I'm hopefully coming from the same place I'm going, and I'm going in a straight line. It's interesting how light, when you look at it, throughout the ages there's been a discussion. Is light a particle or is it a wave? And so they do all sorts of studies to see, is light a particle or a wave? Is it something? Does it actually have substance? And they found that yes, it does. Light, however, different from what they thought to be most other things, has a duality to it as well. Light is both, according to Einstein, a particle and a wave. It can behave as particles do and as a wave does. But what's interesting, what makes it take the form of, like the Wonder Twins, form of a wave or form of a particle? What makes it take shape depends on whether or not we observe it. Literally, whether or not a person is watching one of these experiments that they do in the lab, that's what makes the difference. And they have found that. Now, that was the beginning, back in the beginning of quantum mechanics. And if you research this, I'm not talking about like Dr. Emoto theories. Now, Dr. Emoto, I used to be a big fan of Dr. Emoto. I believe he has been debunked. I'm not sure, but still, Dr. Emoto, I want you to know that if you're watching this, I'm with you. I believe that what you say is truth. We might not yet have found the evidence to prove it to the scientific community. Maybe you have, and all of these things are, alternative facts. But I believe that what you say is true. However, I don't think I can actually cite it as fact quite yet. If you know who I'm talking about, you know what I mean. But I know that the whole scientific community, if you ask a physicist, he will tell you or she will tell you, yeah, basically everything behaves differently depending on whether or not people observe it. It's called the observer effect. The entire universe, really, as Wayne Dyer said, we don't see the universe as it is. We see the universe as we are. And that's true on not just a metaphysical level, but on a very physical level. What science has found is that, it's not our brains that see things, it's not our eyes that see things. It's really the spirit within us that sees things, that tells us what things are, and not only tells us what things are, tells other things what they are. And on a very practical, real level, what they have found is light behaves differently based on whether or not people observe it as it is behaving. I mean, do I have to draw the parallel there between our office energy vampires, our coworkers, our bosses, our customers, and light? Do I have to? We are made up of cells. Cells are made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And electrons, for example, are made up of nothing but light. Light holds together the nothingness. And the more deeply they go into every substance, the more they realize there's nothing there. It's all made up of light. And light behaves differently depending on whether or not people look at it, if it's being observed. We are made up of light. When I come into a room and I illuminate it, I am having a direct impact on the way people behave, the way their bodies behave. We are finding now the way the molecules and DNA in their bodies behave. We have such a profound effect on so many different levels. One of the things we know to be true, whether or not you can perform these experiments and see them in action, or whether or not you just want to perform a social experiment, you know that there's always one person who can come into a room. Let's say that you go out to lunch and you're sitting with some coworkers and one person comes in, you know who this person is, they sit down at the table, and all of a sudden the entire conversation changes. The whole tone changes, either to a negative one or to a positive one. But there's one person that tends to affect the entire group and the entire conversation. But that one person really is you. It might seem as though all of those people are separate. They are not. You are the indicator as to whether or not your conversation, your life, the world is going to be negative or positive. It starts right here. It really does start with you and I saying, I'm sick of this. I can't take it anymore. I can't take the illusion of what's going on. None of the conversations that people have been having, none of the things that people have been spouting, the slogans, the hatred, the negativity, none of that is real. And I'm going to, basically call it by its name. Just like Rumpelstiltskin. Once I can call you by your name and say, one of my best friends, Crystal Dixon, used to say,
"The devil is a liar."
And it's funny, I never got it when she would say the devil is a liar. I never got it. I get it now. When you call what is, false by its name and say, hey, darkness, you're not real. There's nothing to you. All of a sudden it changes. It's not scary anymore. It has no power. It is powerless because I am light, darkness. And when I'm here, you cannot be here. And if we remember that in our conversations, positive words have power. Positive energy has power. Light has power. I'm made up of light. I am here to be in my natural state. My mom calls me up every now and then and say things like,
Ugh, I think I'm depressed. I feel as though I have no purpose.
and that's very important to her, whether or not she feels as though she has purpose. You always have purpose in me, mother. Always. Let's show a picture of my mom. Yes.
No more danger phrases.
You always have a purpose in me. I love you, mommy dearest. And when we feel as though we are without purpose or that we are not doing our business that we're here to do, we get depressed. We don't feel at ease. When we are in our natural state, Aristotle said that for an eye to actually be a good eye, it has to see. It has to do what it was supposed to do. For us to feel as though we are good people, we have to do what we are here to do. But many times we get confused. We think we're here to do something else than what we're really here to do. In our natural state, think of light. That's what we're made out of. That is all we are. It's what we're made up of. What does it do? It spreads out and it illuminates everything. That's really what we're here to do. We're not here to pretend as though the darkness is real and buy into it and start saying, yeah, or you know what I think, and argue with people about, political beliefs or religious beliefs or whatever it may be. I'm simply here to shine light on you and you will change. They talk about how the more light there is, the more color starts to disappear. And when there's enough light, you can't see color. Everything is the same color. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. When there's truly enough light shining on something, hopefully the world soon, you don't even see color because there's so much light. We are so enlightened. We are so in the light. I'd rather be a part of that because, as we talked about in the first lesson, I'm always a part of something. There's no neutrality in the universe. What are you a part of? So what can we do? What are some practical steps that we can do? Because I'm all about, we get into these thought patterns. You might be in a pattern of arguing with people, of being negative. And that's okay, because we're going to get out of that pattern. What can we do? Remember that when you think negative thoughts, speak positive words. Something occurs in our brain that's called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity refers to the process that the brain goes through of creating new fibers, new information paths, new circuits, basically. When we start changing the way we talk, we start changing the way we think. Remember that thought patterns and speech patterns are directly connected. And when we start changing the way we think, we start changing the way we see the world. When we start changing the way we see the world actually starts to change. And that is according to quantum mechanics. Basically, any beginner science course these days, any physics course will tell you that when we talk about our words changing the world, when we talk about them here as communicators, it's very true because our verbal patterns affect our thought patterns. That directly affects neuroplasticity in the brain. Neuroplasticity then transforms into, I'm going to start seeing things differently. When I start seeing things differently, things will actually start being different. I can change the world with my thoughts. I can change my thoughts with my words. And the findings that come from all over the world, from really any neuroscientific institute, are going to say that the words that we speak, that we hear, or that we think are going to affect the brain. Not just the frontal cortex and the amygdala, but every part of the brain is going to respond to the words that we're thinking or seeing or hearing. And for example, when we hear scary things, like, oh, everything's a disaster. Oh, the world is caving in around us. Oh, people coming into your neighborhood are rapists and murderers and, thieves and all of that. When we hear these fearful things, it causes so much, I'm just going to say negative chemical to be released in the brain that it can be paralyzing for many of us. And we get caught in a fear state. And it's hard to break out of that state. However, when you hear positive things, for example, just the words peace, love, mom, dad, when you think positive thoughts or you say them, ooh, namaste. Now, don't start saying that because it's trite, it's overused, and people will be annoyed. But if you start saying positive words, thinking positive words, it releases a lot of good chemicals, like oxytocin, I think we've all heard of. And we start to release that chemical, which actually drives us forward, which propels us to take action. The other negative words don't propel us. The other negativity and negative words and negative thoughts, especially when they're fear-based, tend to paralyze us and make us sit still. Like when you're really freaked out, we tend not to breathe. And there's a reason for that. We want to check out our environment, make sure that if there's somebody close that's going to cause us harm, they can't even hear us breathe. There are many reasons why we will become paralyzed or why we will take action. So I would like you this week to do that. When you start thinking negative thoughts, speak positive words. Start to retrain your brain. Neuroplasticity is the key to so many of us changing our entire world. There was also a study done in 2008, which I think is fascinating in terms of professional communication, which talks about the TAR effect, the transference of attitudes recursively. What that means to us as communicators is, if I want to be seen as positive and more liked, if I want to gain the respect and attention, positive attention of others around me, especially at work, if I tell you, I like you, if I say positive things about you, that is not as effective as if I say positive things about someone else. Meaning if I'm sitting with Mary and John walks by and I say to Mary after John goes, so he can't hear me, if I say, Have you ever had a chance to work with John? She says, no. And I say something like, well, if you ever do, I would take advantage of it because he's super cool and you'll learn a lot and you really like the experience. I like him a lot. I liked working with him. Anytime that you get the chance to say positive things about other people, do it, because that has more power than you saying positive things to people about themselves. So do that. Remember this week, ask yourself, okay, what am I thinking? What are my thoughts? What are the words? And when you hear negative words or think negative thoughts, speak positive words. When you have the chance, implement the tar effect. Say positive things about other people. And when you get the chance, use profanity. According to recent studies, that makes us appear more honest. But, some of us just can't do that. We figure, that. I can't say that to at work. And I can understand that. I don't want you to lose your job over this. But now we have two principles that really we can use as the substance of our communication. Remember that, number one, we are always either transforming or conforming. There is no neutrality in the universe. And number two, we can't cast out darkness with more darkness. You can only cast out darkness with light, but light always casts out darkness. To light, there is something. Darkness is simply the absence of light. When I want to be a powerful communicator, that means I'm going to, by definition, be saying enlightened things. Not buying into the myth of the darkness. I'm going to say, I'm rising above that. And I am made up scientifically of light. So what am I here to do? What are you here to do? You're here to shine.